What happens when one of the most dangerous men who ever lived sits across from a talk show host who thinks he's untouchable? You're about to find out, because what went down between Mike Tyson and Jimmy Kimmel that night changed everything. The studio lights were blazing hot as Mike Tyson walked onto the Jimmy Kimmel live set, his massive frame casting shadows across the polished floor. The audience erupted in applause, but something felt different tonight. Kimmel sat behind his desk with that familiar smirk, but there was an edge to it, something calculating and cold. "Ladies and gentlemen, the baddest man on the planet, Mike Tyson," Kimmel announced, his voice dripping with false enthusiasm. The crowd cheered as Tyson settled into the guest chair, his piercing eyes already scanning Kimmel's face for signs of what was to come. "Mike, Kimmel began, leaning back in his chair with an arrogant confidence. "Thanks for being here tonight. I have to say, you look different than I expected." Tyson's jaw tightened slightly. "Different how, Jimmy?" "Oh, Kimmel waved his hand dismissively. "Calmer, I guess. More, domesticated. It's like seeing a lion that's been declawed." The audience let out an uncomfortable chuckle, but Tyson's expression remained stone cold. "Domesticated," Tyson repeated slowly, his voice carrying that familiar lisp, but with an underlying menace. "That's an interesting word choice." Kimmel's grin widened. "Well, I mean, come on, Mike. You're not exactly the same guy who used to bite ears off anymore, right? You've got your little pigeon hobby. You're doing commercials. You're practically a teddy bear now." The camera caught Tyson's hands slowly clenching into fists on his lap. "You think I'm a teddy bear, Jimmy?" "Hey, don't get me wrong," Kimmel continued, clearly enjoying himself. "Transformation is beautiful. It's just funny how the mighty fall, you know? I remember when people used to be terrified of you. Now you're more like everyone's crazy uncle who shows up to family dinners." The studio audience had gone quiet, sensing the shift in energy. Tyson leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "You want to see the old Mike Tyson, Jimmy?" Kimmel laughed, but it sounded forced now. "Easy there, champ. We're on television. This isn't the octagon or whatever." "The ring," Tyson corrected, his eyes never leaving Kimmel's face. "And you're right, this isn't the ring. In the ring, there were rules." The host shifted uncomfortably but pressed on, apparently unable to read the danger signs. "Speaking of rules, let's talk about your past, shall we? I mean, we can't ignore the elephant in the room. You've done some pretty terrible things, Mike. Things that would land regular people in prison for life." Tyson's breathing had become more audible, his chest rising and falling with measured intensity. "What things are you talking about specifically, Jimmy?" "Oh, come on," Kimmel scoffed. "Don't play dumb. The conviction, the allegations, the violence. I mean, should parents really be letting their kids look up to someone like you? Isn't it kind of sick that we celebrate people who've hurt others?" The silence in the studio was deafening. Even the cameramen seemed to hold their breath as Tyson slowly stood up from his chair. His 6-foot frame seemed to tower over everything, casting long shadows under the studio lights. "Sit down, Mike," Kimmel said, his voice cracking slightly. "We're having a conversation here." "No," Tyson replied, his voice now carrying the full weight of his reputation. "You were having a conversation. You were talking, I was listening. But now, I think it's my turn to talk." Kimmel's face had gone pale, but his arrogance wouldn't let him back down completely. "This is my show, Mike. You don't get to intimidate me on my own show." Tyson took a step closer to the desk, his presence filling the entire frame. "Your show? This is your safe space, Jimmy? Your little kingdom where you get to tear people down from behind your desk?" "I'm not tearing anyone down," Kimmel protested, his voice rising an octave. "I'm asking legitimate questions. The public has a right to know who they're celebrating." "The public," Tyson repeated, his voice now carrying a dangerous edge that made everyone in the studio freeze. "You think you speak for the public, Jimmy? You think you're some kind of moral authority? Kimmel tried to regain his composure, straightening his tie and forcing a smile. I'm a comedian, Mike. I ask tough questions. That's what I do. If you can't handle a little scrutiny, maybe you shouldn't be on television. That was the moment. Everything changed. Tyson's eyes went completely dark, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of every fight he'd ever been in, every moment of rage he'd ever felt, every ounce of power he'd ever possessed. Can't handle scrutiny? Tyson said, taking another step forward. Jimmy, you have no idea what I can handle. You sit behind that desk every night, making jokes about people's pain, their struggles, their failures. You think that makes you powerful? You think that makes you untouchable? The host was visibly sweating now, his hands shaking as he reached for his coffee mug. Mike, you need to calm down. Security is going to come out here if you don't sit back down. Tyson let out a laugh that sent chills through everyone present. Security? You're going to call security on me, Jimmy? Do you know who I am? Do you really think some rent-a-cops are going to save you from me? This is insane, Kimmel stammered, looking around desperately for help. You're proving my point. This is exactly the kind of behavior I'm talking about. No, Jimmy, Tyson said, now close enough to the desk that he could reach across it. This is what happens when you poke a sleeping dragon. You wanted to see the old Mike Tyson? You wanted to bring up my past? Well, congratulations. You got what you asked for. The studio had become a pressure cooker, and Kimmel was about to turn up the heat even more. Despite every warning sign screaming at him to stop, the host's ego wouldn't let him back down. He looked directly into Tyson's eyes and made the biggest mistake of his career. You know what, Mike, Kimmel said, his voice shaking but his words venomous. Maybe this is exactly what people need to see. Maybe they need to see that underneath all that so-called growth and redemption, you're still just a violent animal who can't control himself. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Tyson went completely still, so still that it seemed like time itself had stopped. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried more menace than any shout could. Did you just call me an animal, Jimmy? Kimmel's face was flushed red now, sweat beading on his forehead, but something dark had taken over him. If the shoe fits, Mike. I mean, look at yourself right now. You're standing over me, threatening me, proving every single point I've made tonight. I haven't threatened you yet, Jimmy, Tyson replied, his voice so calm it was terrifying. But you seem determined to change that. The host let out a nervous laugh, glancing at the cameras as if remembering they were being recorded. This is perfect television, isn't it? America gets to see their hero for what he really is, a man who solves his problems with violence. Tyson placed both hands on Kimmel's desk, leaning forward until their faces were mere inches apart. The host's breath caught in his throat as he stared into eyes that had seen more violence than most people could imagine. You want to talk about solving problems with violence, Jimmy? Let me tell you something about violence. Violence is what happens when words fail. Violence is what happens when one man pushes another man past his breaking point. Violence is what happens when someone like you thinks they're untouchable. Kimmel tried to push back in his chair, but there was nowhere to go. You're on national television, Mike. Millions of people are watching. You can't just... Can't what? Tyson interrupted, his voice rising for the first time. Can't show them who I really am? Isn't that what you wanted? You wanted to expose me, right? You wanted to strip away the facade and show everyone the monster underneath? I never said you were a monster, Kimmel protested weakly. You didn't have to say it, Tyson replied, straightening up to his full height. It's been dripping from every word out of your mouth since I sat down. You think I'm some kind of circus act, don't you? Some trained bear that does tricks for your entertainment? The audience was completely silent now, many of them looking toward the exits. The producers were frantically gesturing from behind the cameras, but no one seemed brave enough to intervene. Kimmel made one last desperate attempt to regain control. Look, Mike, I think we're both getting a little heated here. Why don't we take a commercial break and— No, Tyson said firmly, slamming his hand down on the desk with enough force to make Kimmel's coffee mug jump. We're not taking a break. We're going to finish this conversation right here, right now. You started this, Jimmy. You wanted to drag me through the mud on your little show, so let's do it properly. The host was visibly trembling now, all his earlier bravado completely gone. Mike, please, I was just doing my job. I ask tough questions. It's nothing personal. Nothing personal? Tyson's voice was incredulous. You brought up my conviction, my past, called me domesticated, called me an animal, and you're telling me it's nothing personal? I'm a comedian, Kimmel stammered. I make jokes. It's what I do. You make jokes about other people's pain, Tyson corrected. You make jokes about things you've never experienced, things you could never understand. You sit behind this desk every night, safe in your little bubble, tearing down people who've actually lived, who've actually suffered, who've actually fought for something. Kimmel's eyes darted around the studio, looking for any form of escape or rescue. Security, he called out weakly. We need security out here. Tyson let out another one of those chilling laughs. Security isn't coming, Jimmy. You know why? Because even they're smart enough to know not to get between a predator and his prey. Prey? Kimmel's voice cracked completely. What are you talking about? I'm not prey. I'm the host of this show. You were the host of this show, Tyson corrected. Right now you're just a man who made a very bad decision. You're just a man who thought he could humiliate Mike Tyson and walk away unscathed. The tension in the room was suffocating. Every person in that studio could feel that they were witnessing something that would be talked about for years to come, something that would define both men's legacies forever. Kimmel made one final desperate play. You know what, Mike? Go ahead. Hit me. Prove to everyone watching that you're exactly what I said you were. Show them that Mike Tyson can't handle criticism without resorting to violence. Make my point. For me. Tyson stared at him for a long moment, his fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. The silence stretched on, until finally he spoke in a voice that was barely human. You think you're clever, don't you, Jimmy? You think you've got me figured out. You think you can manipulate me into doing something that will destroy my reputation forever. I'm not manipulating anyone, Kimmel replied, but his voice lacked any conviction. I'm just pointing out the obvious. You're a violent man who can't control his temper. You're right about one thing, Tyson said, his voice dropping back to that terrifying whisper. I am a violent man. I've been violent my entire life. I've hurt people in ways you can't even imagine. But you know what the difference is between me and you, Jimmy? Kimmel shook his head, unable to speak. When I hurt people, I do it with my fists, face to face, man to man. You hurt people with your words, from behind a desk, surrounded by security and cameras and lawyers. You destroy people's reputations, their dignity, their sense of self-worth, and you call it entertainment. The host opened his mouth to respond, but Tyson wasn't finished. So let me ask you something, Jimmy. Who's really the monster here? The man who fights with his fists, or the man who destroys souls with his tongue? The question hung in the air like smoke from a gunshot. Kimmel's face had gone completely white, and for the first time since the interview began, he seemed to truly understand the gravity of what he had unleashed. But instead of backing down, something twisted and desperate took hold of him. You want to know who the real monster is? Kimmel said, his voice gaining a manic edge. It's the man who thinks his past doesn't matter. It's the man who expects the world to forget what he's done just because he says he's changed. Tyson's eyes went completely black. What I've done? You want to talk about what I've done, Jimmy? Let's talk about what you've done. Let's talk about how you've built your entire career on other people's misery. That's not true, Kimmel protested, but his voice was weak. Isn't it? Tyson leaned forward again, his voice gaining intensity with every word. How many people have you destroyed on this show? How many careers have you ended with your little jokes? How many people have gone home after being on your show feeling less than human? Kimmel tried to stand up, but Tyson's presence seemed to pin him to his chair. I don't destroy people, I interview them. I ask questions. You humiliate them, Tyson corrected. You bring them here under the pretense of promotion, of friendship, and then you tear them apart for ratings. You're a parasite, Jimmy. You feed off other people's vulnerability. The host's breathing was becoming erratic. You're insane. This is insane. Someone needs to stop this. Nobody's stopping anything, Tyson said, his voice now carrying the full weight of his legendary fury. You wanted to expose me? Fine. But I'm going to expose you too. I'm going to show everyone watching what you really are. And what am I? Kimmel asked, his voice barely audible. You're a coward, Tyson said simply. You're a coward who hides behind humor and pretends his cruelty is entertainment. You're a man so insecure about his own failures that he has to tear down everyone around him to feel powerful. Kimmel's hands were shaking uncontrollably now. You don't know anything about me. I know everything about you, Tyson replied. I've met 1,000 men like you, men who think they're untouchable because they've never faced real consequences for their actions, men who mistake cruelty for cleverness. The studio was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Even the cameras seemed to be holding their breath as this confrontation reached its peak. You know what your problem is, Jimmy? Tyson continued, now walking slowly around the desk toward Kimmel's side. You've never been punched in the mouth. You've never felt real fear. You've never experienced the consequences of your words. Kimmel spun in his chair to face Tyson, his eyes wide with terror. Stay away from me. I'm warning you. You're warning me? Tyson let out a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. You're sitting there trembling like a leaf, and you're warning me? Jimmy, do you have any idea how ridiculous you sound right now? This interview is over, Kimmel declared, trying to stand up again. Security! Get security in here now! Tyson placed one massive hand on Kimmel's shoulder, gently but firmly pushing him back down into his chair. Sit down, Jimmy. We're not done talking. Don't touch me! Kimmel shrieked, his voice cracking with hysteria. Don't you dare touch me! Or what? Tyson asked, his voice deadly calm. What are you going to do about it, Jimmy? Call your lawyers? Write a strongly worded monologue? Make some jokes about it tomorrow night? Kimmel was hyperventilating now, his chest rising and falling rapidly as panic set in completely. This is assault. You're assaulting me on television. Am I? Tyson asked, removing his hand from Kimmel's shoulder. I haven't hit you, Jimmy. I haven't hurt you. All I've done is talk to you the same way you've been talking to me. That's not the same thing, Kimmel protested weakly. Isn't it? Tyson moved back around to the front of the desk, but remained standing. You've been trying to hurt me this entire interview. You've been trying to humiliate me, to break me down, to make me look bad in front of millions of people. The only difference is that when I intimidate someone, I'm honest about it. The host looked around desperately, but there was no escape. His producers had apparently abandoned him, his security team was nowhere to be seen, and he was alone with one of the most dangerous men who had ever lived. I quit, Kimmel said suddenly. I quit this interview. Get off my stage. Tyson smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant smile. Your stage? Jimmy, this stopped being your stage the moment you decided to disrespect me. Right now, this is my stage, and we're going to finish this conversation. I have nothing more to say to you, Kimmel said, his voice barely above a whisper. But I have plenty more to say to you, Tyson replied. See, Jimmy, you made a mistake tonight. You thought you could treat me like all the other celebrities who come on your show. You thought you could push me around, insult me, humiliate me, and I would just sit there and take it with a smile. Kimmel said nothing, his eyes fixed on the floor. "But I'm not like other celebrities, Jimmy. I'm not some actor or singer who's afraid of bad publicity. I'm Mike Tyson. I've been to prison. I've been broke. I've been hated by millions of people. There's nothing you can do to me that hasn't already been done." Tyson leaned down until he was at eye level with the terrified host. "But you, Jimmy, you've got everything to lose. Your show, your reputation, your comfortable little life. And after tonight, after everyone sees how you crumble when someone stands up to you, what do you think is going to happen to all of that?" Kimmel finally looked up, tears of humiliation and fear streaming down his face. "Please, Mike, I'm sorry. I went too far. I know I went too far." "You're sorry?" Tyson repeated, his voice filled with disgust. "Now you're sorry? After you called me an animal? After you tried to destroy me on national television? Now that you're scared, now you're sorry?" "Yes," Kimmel whispered. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please just leave. Please just go." Tyson stood up to his full height one last time, looking down at the broken man cowering in the chair. "I'll leave, Jimmy. But first, I want you to look into that camera and tell everyone watching what you really are." "What?" Kimmel's voice was barely audible. "Tell them you're a coward," Tyson demanded. "Tell them you're a bully who can only pick on people when you think they can't fight back. Tell them the truth, Jimmy." Kimmel shook his head frantically. "I can't. I won't." "Then I'll tell them," Tyson said, turning to face the main camera. His voice became strong and clear, carrying the authority of a man who had never backed down from anything. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight you've witnessed something that should never happen on television. You've seen a host try to destroy his guest for entertainment. You've seen what happens when someone mistakes kindness for weakness." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "Jimmy Kimmel invited me here tonight not to have a conversation but to humiliate me. He wanted to tear me down in front of millions of people. What he didn't expect was that I would fight back. What he didn't expect was that his victim would refuse to be a victim." Tyson looked back at Kimmel one final time. "This is what happens when you underestimate someone, Jimmy. This is what happens when you forget that some people can't be bullied, can't be intimidated, and won't be disrespected." With that, Mike Tyson walked off the stage, leaving Jimmy Kimmel sitting alone in front of millions of viewers, completely destroyed and utterly humiliated. The cameras kept rolling as Kimmel sat there in stunned silence, the weight of what had just happened settling over the studio like a heavy blanket. The most powerful man in late-night television had just been brought to his knees by the baddest man on the planet, and everyone had witnessed it. This wasn't just a heated interview, it was the end of Jimmy Kimmel's reign of terror, brought down by a man who refused to be anyone's victim. If you enjoyed this story of what happens when a bully finally meets someone who won't back down, make sure to subscribe for more incredible confrontations and shocking celebrity encounters. Drop a comment below and let me know, who do you think would win in a verbal sparring match between Mike Tyson and another late-night host?